Hi, I'm Jana Benj and I'm here at the Kerouac Project of Orlando, and I'm with Rob Metcalf, who is our writer-in-residence here right now. He's been the resident for December, January, February of 2014 and 2015. He's from Wellington, New Zealand, and he's going to start us off with an excerpt from the novel that he's been working on here in the house. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Jenna. Right, I'm going to read from the beginning of my novel, which I've been working on here. It's currently entitled The Slow Smoke of Burning. William Eager returned to his house in the late morning and was surprised to find it no longer there. That is perhaps an exaggeration. Parts of it were there, blackened, charred parts, window frames with no windows, and dense sooty streaks rising above them like wild eyebrows. William could not prevent his own eyebrows, not yet wild but heading that way, from rising dramatically at the sight of the ruined house. The shock of seeing its emaciated silhouette against the sky was like the first glimpse of a gravely ill friend. William was habitually understated in the face of life's reversals, but discovering his place of residence resembling a giant ashtray was something beyond the ordinary. Firefighters roamed the charred ruins and picked their way through debris on the lawn. They moved without urgency, like languid party guests on the morning after, thought William, moving slowly as though through a forest of beer bottles and empty chip packets. He liked to make analogies within his frame of reference. "Can I help you, mate?" asked one of the firefighters as William reached the gate. Yeah, it's my house," said William. The firefighter looked at him suspiciously. "We've already made contact with the landlord." "No, I mean, I live here. I don't own it," said William. "Fortunately," he added. "We were told it was students living here," said the firefighter. "Oh, it is. It's students and me." The firefighter continued looking at William uncertainly, as though reluctant to believe that this man, apparently in his early 30s and professionally, if shabbily dressed, lived in a student flat. "So where were you when the fire started?" "Oh, I stayed away last night." "No one called you?" "No, well, I don't think all of my flatmates have my number. It's a pretty random place." "Well, we still need to secure the site, so it's not safe for you to come in and have a look just yet. Do you have somewhere to go?" Yeah, William replied, despite not having anywhere to go. "Okay, if you could speak to the police constable over there and give her your details, then they can get in touch with you to sort everything out." "All right, thanks mate," said William. He began walking in the direction of the police officer. She was standing beside a car parked on the other side of the street, in front of a row of wooden Victorian houses. They were all attractive colour schemes and renovated verandas, gleaming in the sunlight, as if to emphasise the contrasts with the smoking pile that William was now walking away from. "Hey," the firefighter called after him. "Do you really live here?" William nodded. "Home sweet home." "Okay, you just seem kind of relaxed about your house burning down, that's all." The firefighter smiled, but still looked puzzled. William shrugged and tilted his head, and continued walking towards the police officer. She was shorter than William, and her hair was drawn back neatly from her face. She had a long, pointed nose and quick blue eyes that fixed on William as he approached. He imagined that she ran marathons, possibly practiced a martial art. He felt a little intimidated. "Good morning, sir," began the officer as William reached her. Hi, the fireman over there said I should come and talk to you." "Yes," said the officer. Well, I live here. You resided at this address, sir?" Yes." "Your name, please?" "William Eager." "Contact address?" William hesitated. He put his right hand on the back of his head and began slowly scratching. It was a good question. He thought for a moment. It was not an address he wanted to give, because of what it signified, but he had no other option. So he gave the officer the address he'd written on school permission slips, university applications, and postcards home while living abroad. The address of his parents in Paraparam. William was moving home. The officer took down his phone number and email address and then continued. "Do you have insurance, William?" "I think so," he said. The officer looked at him blankly, her eyes blinking as though she were unable to hear equivocal answers. William felt he needed to clarify. "I know I had a policy for something, probably contents, but I'll have to check it's up to date and all that." "Yes, you should ascertain the status of your policy, sir. Okay, I will ascertain that, he said. The officer explained the process involving police, fire service and insurance assessors. It sounded unnecessarily complicated. Well, I guess you know where to find me, said William. Yes, thank you, Mr. Eager. The officer closed her notebook with an officious clap and strode off in the direction of the firefighters, leaving William alone on the pavement. The morning sun caught the uneven bumps and undulations in the concrete, which rippled down the street in a sea of tar and stones. He needed to collect his thoughts, and he knew he could kill some time over a cooked breakfast at the local cafe. He had a mate who worked there. So he turned in the direction of Tinakori Road and walked away from the ruins of his flat, brushing his hand through his thick dark hair and exhaling through pursed lips and something approaching a sigh. His face was a study of resigned dejection, his blue eyes downcast and nestled in grey hollows above broad cheeks. He scratched the rounded end of his nose. His eyes scanned the quotidian details of the street jealously. It was just another day in the inner city suburbs, but for William it was a watershed, a caesura in the easy rhythm into which his life had fallen. So this was William Eager, at 31 years old, with no meaningful job and now no home, well qualified, reasonably experienced, and utterly adrift. William looked across the city as he crossed the motorway bridge. The buildings in the foreground were ranged against the hills and the vast blue sky beyond. The whole scene resembled a diorama in which cardboard ridges were stacked in ever higher succession, the nearer lines clad in native bush, and the further, higher lines dissolving to purple, with great streaks and shadows along their length, where ridges changed direction, or a massive rockfall had ripped a chunk out of a mountain. Closer to the city, the late morning sun fell on Mount Victoria and Oriental Bay like rumpled gold leaf, and this part of the picture, the snug little city and its proximate suburbs, suggested civilization and comfort. The rows of sun-drenched houses on the hill might have led to further suburban streets and hinterlands beyond, but they didn't. They led simply to vast wastes. When William reached the cafe, his friend Nathan was busy at the coffee machine. He looked up and raised his eyebrows quickly in recognition before returning to duty. William waited while Nathan finished making a coffee. "Day off, mate," said Nathan a moment later, grinning and wiping his hands on the back of his apron as he came around the corner towards William. "Kind of," replied William. "Been a busy morning?" "Yeah, not too bad." Nathan sat in the chair opposite William, brushing a lock of brown hair back from his face. "So what's been happening, mate?" he asked. William shook his head. "You wouldn't believe it, Nath." "Oh no, what is it?" Nathan beamed at William expectantly. "My flat burned down." Nathan's smile slipped. "What? No way. Is everyone okay?" "Yeah, everyone's okay. We had smoke alarms, so..." "How'd you get out?" "Well, I wasn't there." "Well, it's lucky for you." "Maybe. It doesn't feel like it, though. The place is a big smouldering pile of rubbish, and I can't get in there. It looks like it'll be a write-off." "You need a coffee, mate." "So what are you going to do, man? You know, you can crash at my place if you need to," said Nathan. "Cheers, but I think I'm going to head out to my parents' place. Pretty strange to be going back there, though. It feels like I'm going round in circles." "Mate, I think your flat burning down's a pretty reasonable excuse for moving home. It won't be for too long anyway. You'll get another place." "I'll never get another place like that, Nath. Rent's gone up so much since I moved in." "But you've been in that place for how long now?" asked Nathan. "Since shortly after I got back from London, so about 2 years." "Right, so you've lived there for 2 years. Your flatmates all appear to be teenagers, and you've had so many flatmates, I bet you don't even know the names of the current lot." "Yeah, I do. There's James, Anna, Craig. So, okay, it's pretty rough that your flat just burned down, but honestly, man, this is a chance to get a new place. Try something different. You don't have to be at your parents' for long." More customers were beginning to drift into the cafe now, as the early lunch crowd heralded the beginning of the midday rush. Nathan stood up from the table and tilted his head towards the counter. "Anyway, Will, I'd better get back to it. I'm really sorry about your place, bro." Nathan fixed William with his light brown eyes. His wide smile had just retreated to a smirk. "Okay, thanks, mate. I'll let you know." Nathan returned to the counter and William stayed to finish his coffee. Once he'd finished it, he could delay his return home no longer. He left the cafe and continued walking down the street towards the railway station. The street was lined with office buildings and the sidewalks were busy. William liked living close to the heart of the city, even if ultimately it had failed to disturb the inertia at his core. But now he was moving far from here, where the city's life and activity were inaudible, where the hushed and silent suburban streets seemed to be out of breath entirely. As he reached the railway station, he remembered how, as a schoolboy, when he and his friends came to town on the train, they would huddle around the classical pillars that adorned the facade of the station, smoking cigarettes and talking excitedly of the evening to come. But there was no excitement now, just the empty daytime station. He took his seat on the train and, as it slid out of the station, felt that all the initiations and misadventures of his adult life, so far, were being erased with each passing railway sleeper. The train gathered pace towards its destination under the high midday sun, and William sank into his seat and sighed. Despite the forward motion of the train, he felt distinctly that his life had begun to move in reverse.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenna.
Wow. Now, tell us a bit about this. Obviously, it's set in Wellington, your hometown. And just so everyone knows, I'm from New Zealand as well. So we'll get a New Zealand New Zealand conversation going here. I don't want to confuse you all. Had you had the idea for this novel before you came here, or?
Yes, it's something that I'd started working on before I came, and I really wanted to do a lot of work on it while I was here to develop that idea. Something I'm interested in. A lot of New Zealanders travel abroad and live abroad for several years and then come home, so it sort of looks at what happens after the end, and how you adjust to that.
Your big adventure's over, and...
Yeah, and it's sort of, in many ways, a lot of young people focus on that as they grow up, perhaps as they're going through university or working to save money for their big trip, and then they do it, and that's fantastic, but they never really thought much about what life would be like when they came back from that. And so you can get into a place of uncertainty, and so I guess the story starting with that image of destruction of his house, it's both a crisis and an opportunity, so it also clears the slate for him to think about how he can move forward.
There's a finality to a house burning down.
There certainly is.
There's no going back.
Yeah, and it's sort of an involuntary divestment of personal possessions as well.
Right.
So
you can go zen very quickly.
Yeah.
So you are here in Florida from Wellington, New Zealand. How did that come about?
Well, it's something I've been aware of for a number of years, the Kerouac Project. I first heard about it through a newsletter that I got via email when I was in a writing group at university. And so it attracted my attention initially because it was associated with Jack Kerouac. But I learned a bit more about it and thought that was something I wanted to do. So I actually applied for it several times over the years. And got used to that sort of annual process of applying and then not being
rejection.
Successful, which I think any writer has to get used to doing. And then ultimately I kept at it and was eventually successful.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, what about your writing life in New Zealand before you came here? Were you a full-time writer, or what was happening there?
I've always been a part-time writer. It's been something I've always been interested in since I was small. But I have a day job, so I write in my spare time. And I've had a few things published in New Zealand and was sort of starting to get a bit of momentum with that before I came over. So it led nicely into having this period of full-time writing.
And how do you think your time here will change, add to your perspective, whatever, when you go back to New Zealand?
I think it'll be. I think it is a really significant experience for me in developing as a writer, because it's been the first opportunity I've really had to have a long run at projects and work on something every day for a good amount of time, and just let those ideas develop without other concerns. So I think I'll take that back. I've got a big body of work that I've done over here. Some stories are completed, some need to be edited, some are just starts, but I've got a lot to work on, so it really gives me a lot of momentum going back home to continue with writing.
Great. And while you've been here in Orlando, is there anything that surprised you about the experience here?
I suppose that, not necessarily surprised by, but certainly impressed with the activity on the literary scene around Orlando. I didn't know a lot about Orlando before I came. Naturally, I did some homework when I found out I'd got the residency, so I knew a lot about the neighbourhood, where I'd be going and that kind of thing. But I've really found that there's a very active literary community in Orlando. You know, there's often one or two or several things going on in a week that you can go to, and I've really enjoyed being a part of that. And people have introduced me to that and accompanied me to various events. So I was really impressed by that.
That's cool. And you did say that when you were doing your research, you looked on the website and saw other interviews with past residents sitting in this very chair.
That's right, yeah, yeah.
So it's a little surreal that now it's your turn in the hot seat.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Here we are. So for your final question, can you tell me what you think you'll keep working on and where we can expect to hear from you?
Sure. So the novel I've been working on, I'd like to finish that this year, and then begins the process of editing that and knocking that into a shape that I could submit it to publishers. So that's certainly the main project. I've got a number of other short stories I've been working on, some that fit into one particular collection and others that are outside that. So all going well. Hopefully you'll hear about me in a publisher's press release. Perhaps,
well, I do believe you will.
Yeah.
We're going to look forward to it.
Yeah.
And you've been a wonderful writer in residence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenna. Very much enjoyed being here.